which should be an architect's rendering of the front of the new Stanley Museum of Art, which is scheduled to open in September the 2nd, 2022. So just a little under a year from now. I don't know if anyone has had a chance to drive by the site recently, but they just are finishing up pouring the concrete for those front steps. And it really is looking very much like this rendering now. So, you know, I've been looking at these drawings and projections for more than 3 years now. So it's really delightful to see them come into being in real space. So just to give you a little bit of background, I'm sure most of you are well aware of the history of the museum, but it was founded officially in 1969, but the museum itself, the collections began to be assembled in the 1920s here at the University of Iowa. And that's because the University of Iowa was the first university anywhere in the world to consider creative art a form of research and to allow it to stand for the thesis requirements of a graduate degree. So we were the very first university in the world to offer a master's degree in fine art. And two programs started here at the university, one in studio arts and the other in creative writing. And both of those MFA programs went on to become, you know, some of the most important MFA programs in studio arts and creative writing in the world for much of the 20th and into the 21st centuries. And so, you know, that idea of allowing creative art to function as and to stand as research for graduate students led the university to assemble a collection of examples of the best art of our time, was how Walter Jessup, who was the president of the university back in the 1920s, that was how he and graduate dean Carl Seashore really conceived of this art collection. And then in the 1960s, Owen and Leonie Elliott of you know, two Iowans with a really wonderful collection of European modernist art, challenged the university to build a museum to house their collection, which they promised to give to the university if they would actually build a physical museum. And so the University of Iowa Museum of Art was founded in 1969. The first director, Ulfert Wilke, was my parents' painting professor. And so I really do feel like, you know, in some ways it was kismet that I should come around to be, I think, the 9th director of the museum after him. And you all, I'm sure, are all aware of how our original building, how we lost it in 2008 when the Iowa River jumped its banks and flooded the arts campus. We, you know, our building, which was designed in a brutalist style, I have a really fond spot in my heart for brutalist architecture, and our original building, which was designed by a Boston-based architect named Abramovitz, you know, it's a beautiful brutalist building. It's still a beautiful building, but it's not watertight, and it hasn't been since that disastrous flood. And so it's not a place where we can have our collection anymore. I don't think any insurance company in the world would protect the collection in a building that is so likely to be flooded. And so, but the building wasn't destroyed. And so unlike Hancher Auditorium, the Voxman Music Building, and the School of Art and Art History, the Federal Emergency Management Agency did not pay the University of Iowa to replace the art museum building as it did for those other units within the university. And so it has been a long road to this building, and many of you, I'm sure, who are on this call right now helped to make this a reality, because it's a $50 million building. We were challenged to raise half of that total privately, which we did. We completed the capital campaign during the pandemic, during the quarantine, before the vaccine was released, which is nothing short of a miracle. And we could not have done that without hundreds of small donations from donors all over the state of Iowa and from alumni of the university around the world. And that is exactly the way the original art museum building was funded, through many, many, many smaller donations, and of course a few large ones from people who really believe in the university's research and teaching mission and in the power of art to transform lives. And so with all of that goodwill and support under our feet, we are looking to open this new building in September of 2022. The building itself will be complete in December. So just before the holidays, on December 23rd, construction will be substantially complete. It will take about a month for the university's facilities management department to go through their checklist and make sure that everything Russell Construction promised to do was done. And then we'll be moving our offices into the new building in February of the new year. So the question might arise of why it takes so long then to open the building to the public. Some of that has to do with the way that new construction materials release gases. It's a process called off-gassing, and that takes months to really happen. You have to pump the HVAC, the heating and air cooling system, through the building many times before all of that new gas is out of the building and you can bring the art collection in. I don't know why that doesn't stop them from moving us into the building, but I guess it's fine for people, just not okay for art. So we'll be in February. The art will start moving in April. And then it will take quite some time to move close to 20,000 discrete works into the building, some of which will be on view in our inaugural exhibition. Others will be, stored safely on the museum's third floor, and everything will be accessible to people who wish to view it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we virtually walk through the building. But before we do that, I'll just say a few words about the exterior that you can see here. The building was designed by BNIM, an architectural firm based in Des Moines. The lead architect's name is Rod Cruzy. He was an architect who worked for many years with Stephen Hall, who designed the Visual Art Building and Art Building West on the other side of the Iowa River. He also has worked on other buildings around campus. This is his first museum. And it's a museum, although it's, like he was part of the team that built the addition to the Nelson Atkins Museum that opened in 2008. And I was a postdoctoral fellow at the Nelson Atkins Museum through most of that construction. So I feel like I have a real stake in that Nelson Atkins Museum addition as well. It's a beautiful addition. And although Stephen Hall was the lead architect, Rod Cruzy was part of his team for that building. But this is the first museum building that Rod Cruzy was the lead architect on. That's a terrible sentence construction, on which Rod Cruzy was the lead architect. And you can see, his kinship with Hall here, in that he loves to bring light into the building in innovative ways. I really love the fact that, the first floor of the museum will be glass fronted. And so it really, I think, will bring lots of light into the public areas of our first floor. And it also is a lovely metaphor for the kind of transparency that I think a public art museum should have about how we function, what we do, and why we do what we do for the people of the state of Iowa. I love how accessible the building is. Both, you'll be able to walk up a wide front set of stairs. There's also a ramp, and I'm going to use my cursor here to show you where that is. There's a ramp that ascends along the side, along the front of the building for it's fully wheelchair accessible. And then there's also elevators that come up from the underground parking garage. Some people were concerned when construction began that we were destroying the beautiful little park out in front of the museum. Gibson Square Park is the name of the park. And that is not true. We are taking absolutely none of the park. The museum sits on what used to be a surface parking lot just to the south of the main library. And all of the green space that is part of Gibson Square Park will return to the park. It's true that it's been pretty churned up because of construction, and there are you know, until recently there were trailers out in front of the museum, and big construction equipment is still there. But every tree is coming back. So I actually asked them not to cut down trees if they could avoid it. And so they moved the trees that had been in the park. And, you know, I was sitting in my office in the old Museum of Art, and I heard a little tap on my window, and it was the landscapers from facilities management showing me that they were temporarily relocating some of the trees just to one side of my office. They were reassuring me because I made a big stink about it in a meeting. So you're getting tired, I'm sure, of looking at this slide. So let's go forward. This might not be, you know, the sexiest part of the new museum building, but it's a very important part of the building. It is the underground parking garage. This is before, it's complete now, but this was while they were just finishing up construction in the spring. And it will provide 60 parking spaces underneath the building, including handicapped accessible spaces. There is an elevator that will carry people up to the lobby of the museum directly from this space, so you won't have to ever go out in the rain if you don't want to. And another important function of this parking garage, in addition to just providing a place to park your car, is that it would catch the water of the Iowa River if there were ever another flood. Now, I have seen satellite photos of the site when the 2008 flood occurred, and our little patch of land was high and dry in 2008. So we are standing on a high spot of ground. And even if there were another extraordinary flood of the river, we might never see that water here. And, you know, heaven forbid that should happen again. But if there were another flood, our site might stay high and dry. But if the river were ever to reach the footprint of the museum, it would have to fill this parking garage before it reached even the first floor. So it's a water catch. And we saw a similar system work very well at the Figge Art Museum in Davenport when the Mississippi River flooded a couple years ago. The museum itself was untouched, but the director's car, which was parked in the underground parking garage, that was swept away. So, you know, you might want to think about where you park if there's another flood, but the museum itself should be fine. This is just another view of those front steps. And this is an architect's rendering, of course, but it shows a couple things I want to just call out. Our proximity to the university's main library, which I could not be more pleased about. And then you can see the ramp also that leads along the front of the museum. This front terrace, which is named and supported by Craig and Nancy Willis here of Iowa City. It's the Craig and Nancy Willis Entry Plaza. Not only is it going to be a wonderful space to just hang out by, it's going to be a performance space. And right now, you know, it's an exciting time for us because we're booking some of the performances and events that are going to happen when we open the museum. And, you know, we're picking the bands that are going to play and the musicians who are going to perform out here on this terrace. And I hope we also have theater performances. I'm talking to Adam Knight at Riverside Theater, and of course also the university's theater department, about performances that we can have out front here. And people will be able to spread a blanket in Gibson Square Park and watch art, not only inside the building, but being performed on its terrace on a summer evening. So that's very exciting. I should just note that across the street, we have the College of Engineering, the Siemens Center, and the College of Education. We're partnering with both of those colleges, and then the Wellness Center, which is one of the most heavily used parts of the university by students, is just right across Burlington Avenue from the museum. And so we're really going to be well placed to be a campus hub, which delights me. This is a view inside the museum's lobby, and it really does look very much like this now. The last time I was in was about 3 weeks ago, and I think that's probably going to be the last time that I see the inside of this building until it's turned over to the university in January, because they have been laying down the floors and sealing them, and they don't want people walking on the floors, and it's also not so good to breathe that stuff. So we've really been shut out of the building, but it is looking a lot like this now. And so I'll just point out a few things. At the far end of the building, from where we're facing in looking at this slide, there will be a drop-down screen so that we can show films and have slide presentations here in this lobby space, which will double as an auditorium. About 150 people can be seated in this space. There is an acoustic ceiling. BNIM has an acoustician on staff that works with them to ensure that sound will be well controlled inside the building, so that, you know, people will be able to hear what's being presented at the other side of the lobby. And we also have a hearing loop installed here and up on the gallery floor, so that people with hearing aids can tune directly into the sound system that we use, and have the audio sent directly to your hearing aid. The wall where you see our Sam Gilliam painting hanging there, in the sort of directly and almost just a little to the right of the center of the slide. We'll never show our beautiful Sam Gilliam painting, Red April, in the lobby. I'm just going to tell you that right now, because there's going to be way too much sunlight in this space to show works from our permanent collection. But we will have an artwork installed on that wall, because we've conceived of that wall as a space for installations of work by artists with a strong connection to the university or the state of Iowa. And so this will be a spot where every few years a mural will be painted or another work will be installed that is either by an alumnus or by an artist with strong ties to Iowa. What you see right in the center here is that is glass that looks into the light well. This is an open atrium space that brings sunlight directly down through the core of the building, and it's open to the sky. So during the winter, snow will fall through the center of the building, rain will fall through the center of the building, and it will be a space to install some of our really wonderful collection of outdoor sculpture. You can see a kind of beautiful steel suspended stairwell just to the left here. And that is made of perforated steel. It's very beautiful. You know, the perforation of the steel creates a beautiful pattern, very reminiscent of textiles. And we have a really amazing textile collection at the Stanley. But it also serves the purpose of making the stairs lighter, because they are not supported from below, they're really suspended, so that they're hanging stairs, and that, you know, lowers the weight load that's hanging, and makes it more structurally sound. And then of course we have elevators also right here that you'll be able to take up to the second and third floors. I think that pretty much covers the lobby, but if I've forgotten something, oh, there's a coat check just to the other side of that stairs. It's not included in this architect's rendering, but very important in a cold climate like what we have here in Iowa. The rest of the first floor is really given over to the mechanical systems of the building, which are, you know, prodigious. There are a lot of mechanical systems that go into keeping a 21st century art museum running. We are creating a climate inside the building that keeps our art collection safe. And then there are some back of house spaces for security. We have a kitchen on site so that we can cater events here, and a completely enclosed loading dock. Again, that might not be a sexy part of the building to you, but having an enclosed loading dock that you can pull a flatbed truck into makes a lot of difference when you know you're going to be unloading art in all seasons in a northern state. And so all wonderful features of the new building that will help us deliver art to the public. So this is the artist whose work will be featured in our lobby during our first 3 years of being open. His name is Odile Odita. He is an associate professor of art at Temple University, and his work is strongly influenced by American artists like Sol LeWitt, you know, conceptual artists like Sol LeWitt, who creates these colorful wall murals that LeWitt called wall drawings, but also by African textiles. He is Nigerian American, And both of his parents were graduate students here at the University of Iowa. His father was one of the first graduate students in the University of Iowa's celebrated African art program, and then went on to found the African art program at the Ohio State University. So the Adida family has a really strong connection to Iowa, and we're just really pleased to bring this young and rising artist here to Iowa City to create one of the inaugural installations in our new building. And then this is a view of that perforated steel staircase, looking out towards the Wellness Center across Burlington Avenue. This is months ago, so we're way beyond where construction was when this photo was taken, but I kind of like how transparent everything is, because all the walls hadn't yet been built. The light well hadn't yet been enclosed when this photograph was taken. And then, here's an even earlier construction photograph where you can see all the way down that stairwell and into what would become the light well from the unenclosed third floor at that time. You can see on the right-hand side here that the architects, when they were thinking about what that light well would look like, they just virtually stole the beautiful Louise Nevelson sculpture from the College of Education and dropped it into our light well. I can assure you that the College of Education is not giving us their Nevelson, which is a site-specific work. So that work is not going to be the sculpture that's on view when we open. Instead, the sculpture that will be on view is this work by Harriet Frischmuth. It is a gift to the University of Iowa from, I think, the class of 1923. It has a 3 in it. If it's not 23, it might be 33. It's over in the Iowa Memorial Union right now, kind of tucked away in a little corner, but my background is in American art. So my PhD is from Indiana University, and I studied mostly 19th, what art historians call the long 19th century, starting, around the Revolutionary War and ending in the middle of the 20th century. That's the long 19th century. But this is a work created within that span of time by a woman whose name was Harriet Whitney Frischmuth. And she made these beautiful bronze pieces as garden sculptures, and they're all fountains. All of her works are fountains, including ours. And so this is what that work looks like installed at another museum in a courtyard. And I made very few changes to the architect's plans. I have to say the building, which was a beautifully designed building, it was designed in response to a lot of community feedback from people both on campus and in the community, through surveys that were done and through groups that were assembled in 2015. So years before I arrived on campus. I didn't have to change very much. It was a beautifully designed building, but I did a couple things which I will point out that I'm proud of. And one of them is putting water pipes in the walls of the lobby so that we could have fountains in the light well. And I think hearing the play of water in that sort of interior outdoor space is going to be very nice. Another change that I made, and it's also going to allow us to have serve hot drinks in the lobby. So we're not going to have anything as fancy as a cafe, but we will have a coffee cart in the lobby, and then eventually probably a cafe. We'll expand that to become a cafe in the lobby. And I added many more outlets for students' laptop computers in the lobby also, because I know it's going to be a place where students want to study. And I really want students to hang out in the museum. I want to be the most popular study space on campus. So I'm going to walk you, we're going to leave the lobby behind now and walk up to the second floor. I'm showing you what the floor plan looks like. And here I've made some changes too. The doorways to the galleries are no longer lined up quite this straight. I didn't like the idea that you'd be able to stand at one side of the museum and see all the way to the other side, right? I wanted to create more of a winding path for discovery. And then that also serves a practical function of controlling sound. because I know that when we open, we are going to have lots of university classes studying in the galleries, and we're going to have lots of school children visiting during the day with their teachers. And I want to control sound so that those things can be happening at the same time, and people can still drop by on their lunch hour and spend a quiet 20 minutes with Jackson Pollock's mural if they want to, without everybody getting in one another's way. And so I created a bit more of a meandering path, but that's all I can really take credit for up here. We have beautiful built-in display cases on either side. This is the light well, this is the stairwell. So you'll come, and these are the elevators. So you'll come up the stairs and right away be surrounded by art. And these display cases will hold a really comprehensive global collection of ceramics. We have ceramics dating back, 6,000 years and covering, and originating on every continent. And continuing right up to the present. We have a work of ceramic art being created for us right now by Dante Hayes, a recent MFA graduate of the School of Art and Art History, who is using the same manganese glazing that's used on the bricks on the exterior of the building for his work, that he's creating specifically for the museum. I get goosebumps when I talk about that still. It makes me so happy. This is an architect's rendering of what some of these galleries will look like. They did not put the Pollock where the Pollock will ultimately be going, but they dropped the Pollock into one of the gallery views. The Pollock will have a dedicated gallery that's been named by Chris and Susie DeWolf and their family, Iowans all, and their daughter, who's a recent alumna of the university and a communications major, is already working on a PR campaign to highlight some of the features of the new building. So that's pretty exciting. So you get a sense of some of the range in the museum's collection here, from large abstract expressionist works to really celebrated collection of African and Oceanic art, both of which you can see on the right hand side there. The floor of the lobby will be beautiful kind of polished poured concrete, and the floor of the gallery floor and upstairs in the education suite will be this lovely white ash, which also is being used for the ceiling in the lobby and on the third floor. Just a slide here, a historical slide to show where, I mentioned that art collection began to be assembled in the 1920s. Here it is in the 1950s, installed in the Studio Art Building, on the wall, so that students could study directly from it as they were learning to be painters. And this really gets to the heart of what Walter Jessup and Carl Seashore called the Iowa idea, this idea that works of art, that learning should be immersive and experiential, and that works of art are here to teach. And, installed in the new museum building, they will teach not only art and art history students, but also students studying in degree programs across the curriculum and in many colleges at the University of Iowa. So I'm bringing in some slides of other university art museums, just because I want to talk a little bit about how this new building will function. This is, I think, from the Davis Museum at Wellesley College, and this is, a class studying directly from works of art. Oh no, you know what? This is the Williams College Museum of Art. I take it back. This is, a gallery they have devoted specifically to curricular support. And you can see how this gallery is really serving very much as a laboratory for students, in this case, in a sports marketing class of all things, so that, students talking about how images can convey ideas, influence behavior, and get people to think about, sporting events in particular ways. And they seem really engaged, don't they? This is from the Smith College Museum of Art, and it's a family program. They have a regular series of family programs that take place on the weekends. So in this case, it's a group of folk musicians performing for parents and children. It gets pretty cold in Massachusetts over the winter, and families are always looking for things to do inside. And we have similar problems here in Iowa. So we already started a program of musical performances, even in our little tiny gallery space in the Iowa Memorial Union, before the pandemic forced us to close that space. So we're going to pick that program up in the new building and also continue our Saturdays at the Stanley program, where we have all kinds of art viewing activities and family events taking place on the weekends. And of course, we will have a very active K through 12 program. This is also the Smith College Museum of Art. And this is a docent leading a school group. They have these tote bags, I think provided by LL Bean, where, that are full of objects that can be handled in the galleries by small groups of school children. And we are building our volunteer docent program right now and training docents. It's not too late to join. So if you are interested in being a volunteer docent, Susan will tell you how to get in contact with me and I will hook you up. Docent training has already started, but that doesn't mean you can't join. We've been recording all of the training sessions so that people can catch up. And, I always say the docents are in many ways they're volunteers and they're the most important staff we have, because they make all the work that the curators do, planning, preparing, writing, thinking about the collection. They make all that work and scholarship function for our audience. Docents are where the rubber really hits the road for us, because they make the art collection work for the public. And if that's not happening, why have an art museum, right? And K through 12 audiences are some of my favorite audiences. I was a curator of education for many years before I came here. I built a K through 12 program and an academic program at the Colby College Museum of Art up in Maine before I got to Iowa. And then this is our own space, our own little teaching space in the Iowa Memorial Union that we haven't been able to use for 18 months now because it's not COVID safe. But this is Kim Datchuk, our curator of learning and engagement, putting prints from the collection out for a university class here at the University of Iowa. On our third floor, we have 3 classroom spaces that will allow us to really work with students in this way. One of them is a small seminar room for very intimate encounters between small classes of students and small groups of artworks. One of them is a classroom space a little bit bigger than this, that will function very much like this teaching space in the union. We're calling it the visual classroom. And then we have a room that we're calling the visual laboratory that has casework built along 3 of the walls that that's going to allow us to have artworks on view for longer periods of time. So we'll be rotating works through those glass cases every 2 to 3 weeks for faculty who are creating assignments for their students that will require their students to have access to that artwork over a period of time. So for instance, a sports marketing class, right? Maybe we have a group of photographs of sporting events on view, and students in that class will be going up to visit those artworks to write papers about them or to think about or to do reflection pieces. And they need a week to do that, or 2 weeks. That these classroom spaces will be open to the public when they're not in use. And so anyone visiting the museum will be able to just come right up to the 3rd floor, come into the visual laboratory, sit down at a table, plug their laptop in and write, or heaven forbid, open a notebook and write. And if they want to see something that's in a case, we have a very generous anonymous donor who has endowed our 3rd floor. And I mean, this donor has named the 3rd floor. We're still figuring out what that means in the case of an anonymous donor, and what that's going to look and sound like. But they provided not only funding to support the building project, they supported funding to support graduate assistantships so that we can staff these spaces. And there will be students here to do this work of bringing works out, talking about them, handling them, because it's not like people are going to be able to handle our artworks directly. We don't get quite that up close and personal. But making them really, turning them around, showing them upside down, making sure that students can see them from all angles. And I just want to make the point that this isn't just for students. Our collection belongs to the people of the state of Iowa. And so our website will have two features that I hope you all use. One is a complete catalog of all of our artworks, all 18,000 works of art in the collection are in that catalog, and you will be able to search by artist name, by title, by medium, by keyword, by date. And if there's something that you want to see, there'll be a request form on our website. And on the weekends, when University of Iowa classes are not meeting, these classroom spaces are spaces where we will bring works out for the public to see. And so, like any art museum, we can only have a fraction of our collection on view at any given time. Less than 1% of our collection can be on view in our galleries. And that doesn't mean our galleries are small. I mean, we have a lot of gallery space in this new building. It means that we're just like every other art museum. We have a much bigger collection than what can be on view at any given time. And so this ensures that our collection is accessible. People can see works that they remember and want to spend some time with, even if they're not on view in that first installation of our collection. So let's see, I'm kind of getting to the end here, but I want to show some of your old friends that will be on view outside the museum. This is a work by Beverly Pepper. Her work, I think this is called Omega. And this is, Pepper, these works sit directly on the ground. She said she liked the idea of them looking like they're, these core 10 steel works are growing straight out of the ground, like these mountain ranges. So this work is being conserved right now with support from Don and Sherry Stock, two alumni. They have important moments of their time as students at the University of Iowa and during their courtship were spent in proximity to our outdoor sculpture, and in particular near this work by George Rickey, Two Lines Oblique. And so they have very, very generously supported the conservation of these two artworks by Beverly Pepper and George Rickey that will be on view again outside the new museum building. And then this work by Lila Katzen is also coming back. You can see it in its currents. When it was originally installed on the terrace of the old Museum of Art at Left, and what it looks like now on the banks of the Iowa River, it just needs some love. That stainless steel lining of the loop has come loose in some places, and there's some other touch-ups that need to happen. So this work is also being conserved at the Midwest Art Conservation Center in Minneapolis, and this will be on view on the library's terrace adjacent to the new museum building.